Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today I'm doing a video about short story collections. I like to do something every September to go with Shorty September, and I've done different things. I think last year I found some short novels that had been hiding out on my shelves that I had forgotten about, that I maybe read in the past or maybe never read. So this year I'm going to look at short story collections. And I'm going to do that good old favorite, the desert island. If I'm going to a desert island, 10 short story collections from my library that I would take with me. Now, why short story collections? I think short stories get underrated and people gravitate away from them, from short story collections. A lot of people will say that they have trouble getting into short stories or they don't find collections satisfying. And I have had the experience of reading a collection that has a few gems and then some kind of mess stories in the mix. I get it. And also they are hard to talk about in group projects and discussions. And I think that's because, let's say there's a certain month and you're going to read a book and it's a collection of stories. People are not on the same story at the same time. So it's hard to get in deep on any particular story when people are reading. Unless you have somehow structure it so you're discussing one story at a time, it can get a little bit hard to manage. So that I get as well. But to say in general that you just don't like short stories, the librarian in me feels like you just haven't found the right ones. So I'm not really here to tell you what kind of short stories to read. I'm here to tell you what I would take with me if I was going to be stranded for an indefinite period of time on a desert island and I had to grab some of my short stories to take with me for sustenance. And this is just today's selection. If I took more time to dig through the shelves, I might change this up, but I just said, okay, go around the room, gather some up, let's hit it. So here it is, my desert island short story collection. The first one is one that I read quite recently, I guess maybe maybe not even a year ago, maybe around the end of the year last year, but I really want to read it again, and it's The History of Sound by Ben Shattuck. And I've talked about this numerous times. In fact, the story of the day today in my 30 Stories in 30 Days project is the title story, The History of Sound. It might be a slightly different version because it's one that was published a few years ago before he published this entire collection, which is 2024. The movie has come out as well. I really want to see it. The movie is based on the first story, which actually links to the last story. The entire collection has a linked pattern that is called hook and chain, so that the first story is A, and then inside it's like BB, CC, DD. Each two stories have some sort of a connection. Sometimes it is a connection of a person, an object, a theme. The stories could take place in two different time periods, but there's something that connects them and makes a continuity between the stories. And then the very last story relates to this first story. So I'm assuming that the movie hits the first and the last one together. And that is a story about two young men right before and after World War I, who meet in New England and in Maine at a bar and discover their mutual love of music and eventually their love of one another. And they go on this walking tour. Well, it's kind of in two parts. They have their first meeting and then they're separated by the war and then they get together again. And they go walking across Appalachia collecting folk music, instrumental and vocal, and they're using what it is new technology at the time of these wax cylinders that can be turned into kind of phonograph albums. And so they're collecting the music and they're just kind of suspended in time and space, and it's this beautiful story. And then it goes on, and the stories are all very unique and different. So that is the first one I'm going to take. Another reread from a couple of years ago is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha, Philyaw. I am eagerly awaiting. She is supposed to be coming out with a novel. I thought it was coming out in 2025. Haven't seen it. Maybe it's not ready. But I'm really looking forward to reading more by Deesha, Philyaw. This is the only thing I think she has published so far. It is a collection of short stories about an array of Black women, different ages, different situations. The degree to which they're actually church ladies varies as well, but there is a central theme. They're not exactly linked, but there is a couple of references to people in different stories from one to the other, so it's not a strong linkage, but there's a little bit in there. I'm just a big sucker for linked stories, but I'm okay if they're not, but I really love it when they are, or even if there's just little Easter eggs of teeny tiny links or references. I love that. Here's a little spiel. I didn't really read the spiel on the first one. Maybe I'll circle back. There is 14-year-old Jael who nurses a crush on the preacher's wife, the mother who bakes a sublime peach cobbler every Monday for her date with the married pastor, and Eula and Caroletta, single childhood friends who seek solace in each other's arms every New Year's Eve. With their secret longings, new love, and forbidden affairs, these church ladies are as seductive as they want to be, as vulnerable as they need to be, and as unfaithful and unrepentant as they care to be, and as free as they deserve to be. There's some wonderful stories in here. I want to read them all again. And the peach is important. The peach pie is very important in this story. Okay, I'm going to go back to going back to History of Sound to read the blurb. In 12 luminous stories set across 3 centuries, the history of sound examines the unexpected ways the past returns to us and how love and loss are entwined and transformed over generations. In Ben Shattuck's ingenious collection, each story has a companion story, which contains a revelation about the previous paired story. Okay, I think that explained it better than I did. Mysteries and murders are revealed, history is refracted, and deep emotional connections are woven through characters and families. I love this book. All right, let's see what else is in the pile. Another reread. I have this plan to reread in November. Night of the Living Res by Morgan Talty. I've been meaning to reread it for like a year. I love this collection of stories. This is very much linked. This could even, there's some books that are kind of riding the line between being linked stories and a novel comprised of kind of vignettes. And this is one of these. It is about one guy named David, and it takes place at different points in his life between childhood and young adulthood, maybe like up to about age 30. But they're not in sequence. So you may get a story from when he was 10, and then one from when he was 25, and then one when he's 18. And a lot of them feature his best friend, and he lives on a reservation in Maine, the Penobscot Reservation. It's about growing up. It's about hardships. There are a lot of traumatic situations in his family with mental health and addiction. But then there's this amazing humor in this book as well. It's one of those books where there are just some dire circumstances, but then it's really funny as well. I love David and his friend Phyllis in this book. So I really need to go back and read it again. I do love those books that are arguably, sometimes they're presented as a novel and people say, that wasn't really a novel, it was just a bunch of stories. I love those books. I'm thinking Northwoods, How High We Go in the Dark, Under the Eye of the Big Bird. This would be another one, but this one's presented as stories, but he probably could have gotten away with saying it was a novel. Now we're going to reach into the past to an old favorite that I have to take along on such a journey as this island escapade, and that is Raymond Carver. This is just a general collection. It's called Where I'm Calling From, which is the name of one of his stories. It says new and selected stories. That was new as of 1980 something. But I think he'd already passed away when this was published. So it has stories from several different collections, and I just thought it'd be a good general one to take. Some of my favorite stories are in here. He has great titles too. Like here's the first few titles. Nobody Said Anything. That's a story. Bicycles, Muscles, Cigarettes. They're Not Your Husband. Are These Actual Miles? And of course, one of my favorites, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. The Third Thing That Killed My Father Off. Here's another one of my favorites, So Much Water, So Close to Home. That is a story about this woman who is trying to grapple with how she can accept or move on from something that her husband, here's what happened. Her husband goes on a fishing trip with some friends. It's a hunting or a fishing trip, I can't remember. And on the first day of their trip, they find the body of a young woman stuck in a creek or a river, and they decide that there's nothing they can really do for her So they're going to report it when they come back from the trip. So they don't do anything about it right away. They don't cancel their trip and call this in. They just decide to go ahead with their trip, and then they report it at the end. And it's about this wife just trying to process and understand and just trying to deal with the capacity of her husband to encounter this dead woman and that not ruin his trip. And all of his stories are very spare, very subtle. Sometimes the circumstances like that are pretty extreme, but it's not written in extreme fashion. It's, I don't know, somehow he's one of those writers, kind of like maybe Clara Keegan, who can distill things down to just the perfect words, very spare. He deals a lot with relationships, also loneliness, being lonely even though you're not alone. There is a lot in there about heavy drinking, because his past was that he was an alcoholic. He got to a point where he lived in his car. I think he was even writing when he lived in his car, and he finally was able to achieve sobriety, but then unfortunately he developed cancer and he died. That's how he died. There's a lot of alcohol at play in a lot of the stories, and they're just, I feel like I'm not doing them justice. Most of them are quite short. They're all such a punch. You just need to try a couple and see what you think if you've never read Raymond Carver. He's one of my all-time favorites. Now, the next one is someone who I've read a couple of her short novels and love them. I haven't read that many of her stories past her most famous one, which is The Lottery. So, of course, I'm talking about the one and only Shirley Jackson. And I'm going to take along this collected volume, and I'm not going to cheat and read the novels because I can only read short stories on the island, but there's a lot of stories in here, and I haven't read most of them, so I will skitter around through the parts that are just the short stories. And I did put one in the project that's coming up in a few days, I think, that I also haven't read. I think it's called something like The Summer People. I put that in there. But I see some other ones that I have heard are pretty excellent. There's a bunch of stories in here, so I will be busy. I don't know how long I'm going to be stuck on this island, so I got to be stocked up. I'm expecting that they will be dark, weird. They might have surprise endings. I could just read The Lottery over and over if I don't like the other stories. So that, I think, will put me in a good place. Maybe not mentally, but I'll have plenty to read. I'm also going to bring this little book that I know I've read before and I don't remember anything about it. It's Kay Boyle, Life Being the Best and Other Stories. So I put a story by Kay Boyle a few days ago in the project, and it was called, I think it's called Your Body is a Jewel Box, and it's a really powerful little story about a young woman. It starts with a family trying to coax a young woman in off the roof. She's sitting on the roof in the rain in her nightgown. It's the 1920s. That's Kay Boyle's time period. And she's clearly having a mental health episode. The family's trying to coax her in, and then there's this ride to a psychiatric facility with she and her sister and the police officers, and I'm not going to tell you what happens, but a lot happens. It's one of those stories where the whole time you don't know where it's going, and you wonder if you can't tell if this is going to be a quiet story, a loud story. What exactly is going to happen? Oh, I'm not going to tell you, but it made me want to read more and see what else she has up her sleeve. So I know I've read this in the past. I even have a couple of notes in it, but it has completely left me. She's also in my Brilliant Exiles book about women who lived in Paris in the 20s and 30s. So I'm having a Kay Boyle renaissance, so I need to take this with me. And I could never, ever, ever go away without taking Flannery with me. So I'm going to take this big collected Flannery O'Connor that has both Everything That Rises Must Converge and, wait, what's the name of the other short story collection? A Good Man Is Hard to Find. I think The Violet Bear It Away is a short novel, so I can't read that. But there's two short story collections. I have a copy of Everything That Rises Must Converge, but if I take this one, I'll have two collections of stories, And all my favorite ones will be in there, plus some that I might have forgotten about. And I guess this is going to be a dark interlude on this island with Shirley Jackson and Flannery O'Connor and maybe Kay Boyle. But what else is there to do? I'm trying to sit in the shade, eating fruit and reading stories. I'm assuming there's fruit. I hope there's some shade. Do I get to pick what kind of island this is? I hope it's a nice, lush, rainforesty kind of island, except with no bugs. I want to see pretty birds, but no bugs. Do I get sunblock? Okay, I digress. Let's get back to the stories. Okay, the next one is one that I put in my September TBR and I haven't read it yet. It's Where We Go. I never can get this right. Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I loved his book, How High We Go in the Dark, which really was a novel, but it was kind of stories. This one doesn't pretend to be a novel, so I don't know if there's any connection. The stories look weird. I only read the first one, and which was about a man whose wife was eaten by Godzilla. So I gotta see what else happens in here. This was his earlier book before How High We Go in the Dark, and I bought it based on my love of that book, which I've read twice, and I will read again. A combination of the mystical, magical, and marvelous, Sequoia Nagamatsu weaves a collection of bold, hysterical, and moving tales into an unforgettable debut. From shapeshifters to star makers to babies made of snow, the characters in Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone form a community of longing, of the surreal, of wonder. What a joy it is to read each and every story. So I've got to have something weird and speculative in there. And then on the topic of speculative, I'm also bringing, hold on, this anthology that I haven't even opened yet. I had this grand plan this month that every day I would read the story of the day from my project and I'd read another story from one of my books. That didn't happen, and I'm just going to blame Wilkie for that. I mean, it may not be his fault. I bit off way more than I could chew with this TBR anyway. It's halfway through the month and I am not halfway through that TBR, but it is a fact that some of the time that I spent lounging around, daydreaming and reading is now taken up with playing in the yard and taking walks, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But it is I have had to rejuggle things around a little bit. He's doing great. I'll give a little update on him on Friday Reads. But this is The Future is Female, 25 classic fiction. Let me try that again. 25 classic science fiction stories by women, from pulp pioneers to, God, what is the matter with me? From pulp pioneers to Ursula K. Le Guin. And so there's 2 volumes of this book, and I have volume 1. And I will get volume 2 eventually, but what's the rush? Because I haven't even started volume 1. So these are stories that go from the 20s up to Le Guin, a story called 9 Lives from 1969. All these short stories by women, science fiction stories, and what is it, 25. So I could read one of these a day along with all this other. Am I going to be on the island? How long am I going to be there? A month? A year? I feel like I don't have a year's worth of reading, but I have more than a month. So I'll be okay. And then last but not least, I'm going to bring this anthology, American Short Stories, because this has a lot of classics and older stories. Some of them are favorites. Some of them I have not yet read, but this way I'll have some comforting favorites along with me. Just a lot of the usual suspects in here. Poe, Irving, Ambrose Bierce, Henry James, Sarah Orne Jewett, Kate Chopin, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, O. Henry, Edith Wharton, Willa Cather, Ring Lardner, Sherwood Anderson, F. Scott Fitzgerald. I mean, just all of, oh, we do have Ursula K. Le Guin, Flannery O'Connor. So just, it's a 20th century and well, it's 19th and 20th century. It was copyright in 1988. So there's nothing new in there, but there's a lot of old favorites and some extra things to explore that I haven't yet read. It's just a good general classics anthology. It's not super diverse. It's not it doesn't cover anything contemporary, but it has a lot of good, solid classics. Okay, that's it. If I was allowed to have a care package and order some more short story collections, that could be a whole other video. I could tell you about 10 short story collections and anthologies I want to have, but I think we will keep this short and sweet. Well, maybe it's not short. We'll find out. We'll find out when I'm editing. But that's it. That's what I'm going to take to the desert island where I can only read short stories. But that I hope that there's some sort of good vegetarian meal service. I hope this island is in the same connected set of islands from all the other book projects where people are on islands, because maybe we can visit one another, we can make rafts and float back and forth and trade stories. Until then, wait, what? Until then? No, it's not really going to happen. Until Friday, when I come back for Friday Reads, a double edition, because I didn't do it last Friday. I hope that you are having a good week and reading some good books. Let me know in the comments what you think about my collection of short fiction. Have you read these? Do you want to read these? What would you take instead? Tell me your alternative list, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.